You need to go to the grocery store, get 75 gallons of water, get 200 cans of string beans, get like 3 boxes of Twinkies if you like Twinkies because they probably never expire. Get some baked beans in the can. Go, if you're in the army, you know what they are. Go get some MREs and all of that stuff because the US dollar is dead as we know it. It's over. It's a wrap. Trade all your money in and get something else. Don't do any of that, but listen to this video because we're going to talk about is this the death of the US dollar. Every other video I'm seeing, it says Brics, and then one of my homegirls actually sent me a text message and gave me the idea for this show. So to shout out to her, she gave me the idea for this show and said, hey, what is Brics? Is this really a big deal? And after I talked to her, I thought, you know what, other people might have this question, so maybe I should answer it. Well, BRICS, the acronym BRICS, has been around since 2001. It essentially stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, according to Goldman Sachs, the BRICS countries will really have control of the global economy as it relates to trade, import, and exports by the year 2050. Yo, that's kind of right around the corner. And the BRICS country account for 41% of the world's population, 24% of the world's gross domestic product, and 16% of the world trade. So, what the hell is BRICS and why is it putting the United States dollar at issue? Well, the overall goal is a common currency within the BRICS framework, within the BRICS countries. This proposal in August at a BRICS summit is kind of what got everybody involved, okay? Just think about it. Why would these countries want to move away from the dollar and use either their own currency or a currency that's exchangeable among them? Well, from Russia's standpoint, let's just think about it. Russia has so many sanctions because of the Ukraine war. They can't use the US dollar freely, so it makes sense. Other countries involved wants to challenge the dollar. Let's just think about it. India, they actually have an agreement with Russia. It's called the rupee to ruble trade agreement, where they're no longer trading the dollar. So normally what will happen is if I'm China and I wanted to do a deal with India, I can't just give my Chinese yuan to India for their ruble or rupee, whichever one they use. I can't even recall. I'm interchanging them. But I can't just give my Chinese yuan to India to trade for the goods. So if I'm China, I would have to get US dollars, get those goods, give them the US dollars. Those are how the trains is going. So now think about it. They just want to cut out the middleman. Why we have to use these dollars? Well, dollars are important because dollars are essentially the world currency. It's where a lot of countries store their money and have their resources in United States dollars. Think about it. The United States is in debt big time to China. Do you think we go to China and we borrow their money to use? No, that's not what happened. China has a lot of its assets in US dollars. US dollars and gold and silver are pretty much how company stores their reserves. So China has a lot of US cash on hand. So when we go to China to borrow money, China isn't giving us a bunch of their Chinese yuan and we're just converting those to dollars. No, they actually give us cash money and that's how it works. Now, let's just think about this. Um, in addition to creating this currency that they can freely interchange and exchange amongst themselves, the BRICS agreement, if developed, could give these countries access to significant trade routes, which is really important. I mean, think about it. We export things, we import things, a lot of things through shipping channels. So trade routes are always vital. Now, the dollar is the dominant currency in the world and has been for 75 of the past 100 years, if we really want to think about it and put it in a context. And central banks use dollars and gold as a part of its reserves, like I said. So this gives the US dollar the advantage as far as the global economy as a whole. If the dollar loses value, what would that cause for all of us as citizens? It will cause a super hyper inflation. If the dollar loses its value, think about it. The goods that we get from China, that we get from India, we will have to pay three, four, five, 10 times the price for those same goods and services. I'm talking about a gallon of milk maybe like $38 just because the inflation would be so ridiculous. Why does this whole BRICS concept and other countries want to kind of just come up with their own thing? Think about it. We saw this before with the euro when all the countries in the European Union decided to come up with this one commonality, this one common currency, and it's all because of geopolitics. Think about it. The United States has a huge benefit when every other country in the world trades in dollars. They use their reserves in US dollars. It makes the value of the dollar worth, I mean, a lot. That's why you can go to some countries and the value of the dollar is worth 35, 38 times what this country's other country's economy is. But hey, other countries want to get out of that game. They want to buy goods and exchange services in their currency without having to use that US dollar. So China has actually entered into an agreement with Iran and Saudi to open embassies in all of these other countries. And Saudi is the largest producer of oil in the world. And think about this. The vast majority of oil trades is done in US dollars, no matter what countries are involved. Now you have China and you have Saudi Arabia talking about the Petro Yuhan. Well, what the hell is the Petro Yuhan, DFD? Essentially, is a concept that they want to trade oil in Chinese currency instead of US currency. And so, what would be some of the impacts if this BRICS currency is up and running and it starts to shake the foundation of the dollar? Like I said, import and export will be more expensive. There'll be a huge inflationary boost. The United States would transfer more from an importer to an exporter country. Right now, we import everything from other countries. But this would really flip the tables, and the United States would actually start to produce good and sell goods. We would get in the export game. Why? Because our dollar value is lower, so our goods presumably will be cheaper than what they would be producing in China. So it would really flip the economy globally upside down. Is this plausible? Can this actually happen? It's a thing where the answer is yes and no. It could happen. Possibly. It just depends. Russia is a big party and a big part in this BRICS concept, but we know Russia has some instability in their overall economic foundation, which could potentially be problematic. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, how does this concept impact you and me, the everyday people? It's going to happen or it's not going to happen. The only thing we can do is make sure that we have our financial house in order and let the big wigs and the politicians figure out how they're going to do this, how they're going to adjust. I took a look at some videos, and a lot of economists just said that this concept is inevitable. There's no way the US dollar could be the global currency indefinitely that's just dominant. So a lot of economists says it's actually normal for this to occur. There's a transition between countries becoming import countries because we get goods and things from everywhere else because their currency is worth less. So it's cheaper to make there. And if everything flips, we'll become an export company because our goods will be less and other companies will buy. So it all kind of depends. Sometimes it could cause a huge economic crisis, but it all really depends on how one the government handles it, how they can potentially move to postpone it, and whether or not they're going to accept it and usher in the new export economy that the US could potentially come. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to tell you my guess is I could see the United States doing everything within their power to remain as the global economic currency powerhouse in the world because it just makes sense. I mean, how else are we going to fund our massive military budget and all the other stuff that we have going on? So it's going to be interesting. But as for me, I'm not going out buying 6,000 cans of spam and 42 ounces 42 ounces of baked beans, 65 pallets of sardines. I'm not doing all that. hey, this stuff is what it is. You can't really change it. You can only adjust and work on what you can work on.